Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to our continuing coverage of the Lonestar Paracon right here in Schertz, Texas. We have the absolute pleasure of being joined by, well, literal paranormal cinematographer Benjamin Wolf. He has worked on shows like The Indomitable Ghost Labs from our friends, the Kling brothers, as well as The Haunting of and Paranormal State. So many series involving the paranormal. How did you come to the world of paranormal cinematography to begin with? Because that is a very specific, drilled down niche, Ben.
Yeah, it came to me through when I was living in New York City. There was a production company that had discovered the guys at Penn State University, Ryan and his team of because Ryan had been hosting some paranormal conferences as a college student and had started to get some notoriety as far as bringing people together to talk about ghosts. So they thought it would be a good idea for a show because he had a paranormal research team at the college as a student group. And they went on a couple hunts with them and thought that there was something there. So I was known to them as somebody in the New York area that was pretty creative, and they reached out and said, would you be interested in filming a ghost show? And I said, absolutely. I mean, that show was, we're talking 15, 20 years ago now when that was starting out. And it really seemed to me maybe Ghost Hunters was around as one of those original shows. Yeah. And so these guys, we came at it from a much more visually kind of cinematic approach. And I thought, why does ghost hunting mean you've got to throw on an infrared lens? Why does every ghost hunt need to be green and grainy and hard to sort of decipher what's happening? And it just seemed like a gimmick. I thought every high school AV club can compete at this technical level, right? Why don't we're professionals, why don't we try to put a few lights around? And maybe ghosts aren't going to come out if it's dark, was some people's theory. Like, it needs to be dark to attract a ghost. And what I feel is that the dark raises our energy, and the ghost might be attracted to our energy. We're more stimulated being in the dark. We're feeling more vulnerable, and that might be it. But if we're trying to create the energy to attract the ghost, it doesn't need to be dark. People see shadows and spirits and hear noises.
That's right.
At any point. So we need to create an environment to attract that, not necessarily dark lighting, so infrared lens. So we started to use lanterns and, put some lights outside of the house if we were investigating. So you had windows that were lit or shadows that came through, and I just sort of put lights on the floor so things were uplighting, because you're often filming 360 degrees and you don't want to break that wall of, there's a light over there, it's got to be fake. So we made it look more cinematic. And they were, at that point, the paranormal team in Penn State were very young. They weren't seasoned investigators. So they kind of grew up on that show along with us as we created our style of filming. And, I think that the tone that we set visually set that show apart from the shows that were just like the two plumbers that are, kind of in their conference room and using the infrared lens. So I think it created some drama. It made it feel a little bit, not to put too much Hollywood on it, but like a horror movie, and it made it scary. And then the content of that series, and you've been around the paranormal enough, but the content was a very angels and demons kind of approach. It was like the Catholic Church has the longest established history of hunting paranormal, so we're going to follow that rule book. And that was their choice. I mean, we're really felt like we're making a documentary about this paranormal team.
People.
We're not telling them what to. They chose the cases. They were, we were paying, the production company was paying for travel and stuff, so we didn't go far.
That's hugely important to bring up, because a lot of people do not understand the way a reality show is made. The fact that, yes, there is some production as far as, okay, so we're going to this location. What's the overall story of the location that we're trying to portray? But it's different than what evidence are we trying to put forth from this location.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say the one area that we would contribute was in some of the historical research. Like
Sure.
these guys would not always have the time
Yeah.
to analyze all the evidence and to go back through the archives and look at stuff. So we would occasionally offer them support in the archives. And but they would do that too, and they had their own tech equipment. We didn't set them up. We're like, here, this is what you guys are going to use to try to, catch evidence. So they had their stuff, and we supported them. And I think that got me realizing how creative this field is for visual work, that if you're interested in filming TV shows, there you don't go in and turn all the lights on and it's not in a studio and you're on location and it's a natural environment. Why not have some fun with playing light and dark? And so that was a big appeal.
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, setting forth that aspect of letting a team choose which investigations they're going to go on instead of a production company grooming that list of things like, no, we're going to go to this spot because they have a huge commercial draw. We're going to go to this spot because they've been featured on 3 or 4 other shows by the Travel Channel.
Right.
Things like that. I think that's what a lot of production companies go wrong in this field
They
with.
try to package it all, like let's make this sanitized version of and the team's not as motivated, right?
Well, and unfortunately, even whenever I've had the Kling brothers on to talk with them about their experience, eventually they got out of the field because, people are, something's not happening. It's like, you act like we're going to find something at every single investigation.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
Right.
You may whiff 95% of the investigations and get absolutely nothing. So really the question comes to bear as far as you go, not only cinematographer but producer, how do you coalesce that continuously into an interesting episode that keeps people coming back?
Yeah, I think for me the approach is being honest and being transparent with them, because there definitely was some tension with the team early on, for example, of using psychics, because they, like I said, were young investigators. They weren't getting necessarily a lot of evidence, and we needed something for the audience to sort of
tie together with.
Yeah, so we needed psychics to come in and offer some impressions, often connecting the historical data or, picking up stuff that was related to evidence, an EVP or something that the team might have gotten. But it couldn't be like a TV psychic. It had to be a psychic that felt like they were there to support this investigation. So we ended up falling in love with Chip Coffey. Chip Coffey turned out to be great for TV. He got the trust of the team, and they were able to kind of use him, feel like he could contribute. But he was never considered part of their paranormal club. I mean, he wasn't one of their investigators, but in a pinch, we would fly him in. He was our expense. We would bring so things like that, like using a psychic, because TV needs a little more information than a couple of 20-year-olds that are just sort of figuring out how to do EVPs. And so those are the things. But I feel like with an open dialogue, and I mean, Paranormal State's a sort of a specific case. It was extremely popular, and we all know that Ryan ended up having some of his own struggles as the show got successful, because he wanted to control it, and TV likes to control their part too. So it sort of was a lot of push and pull with him, and I think eventually struggled. The show suffered from his trying to hold too tight to stuff.
Well, and there is that definite 38 special hold on loosely aspect to all of it, because even when it comes to data, we were having a great conversation earlier at your table about the idea of data versus evidence.
Yeah.
I say it on my show regularly, like, evidence is what you should give your lawyer to keep you out of prison. Never let it be anything less than that. Ever. Everything else is data. And that data field may be wide, it may be varying, but every point of datum that comes into that data set makes a difference. It makes a difference how it's collected, how you get it in the field, how you chronicle the getting of that data in the field. Because even your videotaping of somebody's meter, can be either taken the wrong way or taken out of place.
Yeah, I thought you had a really good point about that, where you were saying, collect your data on your investigation, put it away for a little while, and then come back to it, and then have it be fresh, because your impressions of everything are influencing it.
Even whenever I ran sound for bands and gave 3-4 bands a DVD at the end of the night of, like, here's your stage set, do not watch this when you get home. Not tonight, not tomorrow. Wait till like Tuesday at rehearsal. Give yourself like
That's
3-4 days so you were coming at it, because otherwise you're going to rip yourself to shreds.
Yeah.
It was always funny after 2 or 3 DVDs to see the bassist like, yeah, I don't need a microphone. Like, I'm good. Because eventually they'd be like, see, I told you were like that on stage. You never believed me until you saw it on footage.
I even think about that sometimes when people were talking about looking for water on the moon, right?
Yeah.
They would look at the moon and they'd say, I see these craters, they must be canals. There's ancient, because I want there to be water on the moon.
Yeah.
So that's a canal formed by water. Like, no.
It's the idea of when your only tool is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Like eventually it's going to get smashed is what's going to happen, because that's how you know how to use that tool.
Yeah.
And when it comes to that, especially with a young group of investigators who are growing, how did that realm of technology change over the seasons? How did their comfortability and even your comfortability with trusting the technology come to change over those seasons?
Yeah, I think one of a couple things evolved for sure. One is that they wanted to do more infrared lens. And so, over time we agreed that we would investigate for, 2 nights, and one could be IR and green, and one could be more cinematic. So we sort of found a middle ground. Another was that early on we thought an investigation meant you sit quietly in a circle and nobody moves, and we learned to evolve that now you can walk around and you can sort of antagonize or generate energy in different areas, and so the things got a lot looser with the investigating, and everybody was comfortable with that. So those were fun things that as we understood that ghosts can manifest at any point, or noise can come. It's not like we all have to create a seance environment where we sit quietly and just really ask a question and a light flashes, or we ask for some feedback. So those were some big things, and I think that those guys. I don't know, there's so many theories in paranormal, but one of them is that the more you go after energy, the more energy becomes aware of you, especially if you're in this angel and demon realm.
The poking and prodding aspect.
Yeah, so like if they know if there is demonic energy or negative energy out there that's not really confined to what it was doing in life. If it's not a mom and pop energy that was once alive and is stuck in a place or has a unresolved issue it's trying to finish before it moves on, but it's ancient darkness that's just sort of looking for a foothold in somebody that's got a weakness and trying to get it to do harm to themselves or others, that if you're pursuing that kind of energy, if you keep going to homes where people feel that energy is present, that energy will become aware of you, and you'll start to have complications in your life, or things will start to...
That's when things get attached to you when you leave property, stuff like that. Because, hey, why would I stay here waiting for energy when this dude's ready to just give it to me?
Yeah.
I'm just going to backpack along with him and head on home.
Yeah.
And that's literally something that we just talked to Victoria Monday about just a few minutes ago as you came up and saw us sitting down. That was part of our conversation because she is a psychic medium. And it's like, how do you keep that from happening? And the only way you keep that from happening is by reassuring yourself all the time, positive, 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 positive.
Yeah.
You cannot delve into the negative. It's not even a possibility for you.
Yep.
Because if you do, negative may very well start happening.
Yeah, so as that show got into some harder cases, and we would bring priests in and we would do exorcisms, we were wearing blessed St. Michael's medals, we're getting holy water thrown on us, we're learning our Latin prayers.
Were you brought up Roman Catholic by chance?
My mom was Catholic. My dad was not. So half of my youth was...
Former seminarian for the church.
Wow, bravo.
And you know, the world of exorcism always fascinated me. I don't think I would have ever been called to the school of exorcism, which has been reopened, oddly enough, in Rome.
Wow.
Where did you fall on that as it happened? Like emotionally, psychologically, how did that sit with you as it happened? Where it's like, wow, okay, things are about to possibly get real.
Yep.
Here's a dude with a collar and an aspergus in holy water, and I'm wearing a medal just in case.
Yeah. It freaked me out initially, for sure.
Okay.
I'm just like this. I've always understood. Like I watched The Exorcist as a kid, and I was terrified.
One of my top 3 movies.
Amazing, right? Absolutely, the top horror film on my list.
Absolutely.
And I was just like, things could go south here at any point. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not a student of this. I'm the TV guy, so I can try to document this. But if things get serious, what do we do? Do we all just flee? Do we keep filming? Do we, put up GoPros in the corner and just leave? Like, what's going to help? What's going to support this? How can we? Clearly, we're working with an individual that's suffering, and we're just like, how can we alleviate some of this suffering?
Yeah.
And can we be an interruption to whatever this force has been putting on this person? So it's to think it can happen immediately. It can feel like you're able to stop some of this whatever loop that they're in, but the person needs to change their patterns and their habits outside of that.
That is the biggest part of it. I own the Roman ritual, like Latin on the left, English on the right.
Wow.
And as you get to the end of that, that is the discharge for the priest and for the confessed, because it happens under the seal of confession. Exorcism does. So that is the last charge from the priest to the afflicted, is like, you need to be spiritually strong. Whatever God, you need to be close to them.
Wow.
You need to remember this.
Yeah.
How did that sit with you as things happened?
So,
Did you feel as though any of the sessions that you were involved with were A, genuine, B, that some kind of relief was offered to the afflicted person?
Yeah. I did feel they were genuine. There were moments that are inexplicable to me, that things, one gentleman, vomited during the experience and just had to purge, and just luckily we had a bucket nearby, but it was the experience was so intense for him that, he released the negativity in him. Another was a woman who we had to return to her home another time. It's a well-documented case because I Am 6 on Paranormal State with the Mooney family in Quincy, Illinois. But the oppression and there was some sense that, I don't know, they were calling it maybe a perfect possession, where the person is almost embracing it in a way, and they try and crack that connection.
There is a very distinct difference with possession and obsession. When it comes to demoniac possession, and that point of demoniac obsession where somebody has willingly given their free will over, be it through addiction, what have you, where they have started this uncharacteristic path, and as it gets darker and darker, they embrace it because it is giving them their end result of what they want. That spirit, what have you, is getting them to their end result, be it through addiction. Once again, what have you. Find a lot of this exposure specifically to demoniac obsession comes through addiction.
Interesting. This one, I think with that story in Quincy, was the young woman's health was compromised. She had suffered from an illness, or still does, Marfan syndrome, and that made her vulnerable. So it wasn't necessarily,
I'll do anything to make this pain end. That moment of bargain.
But it felt like we did have a positive impact there. It just felt
that's
like
beautiful.
It doesn't always seem like there's a moment where you sense the energy's gone. But they can sense the next day that they slept through the night, that they are able to eat a decent meal,
have an alleviation of the oppression,
and then it's the next day and the next day, right? It's like recovery. You're just like, every day gotta.
It's like one day at a time.
Stay in the light.
It's one day at a time. And kind of that Jerry Garcia aspect of, I'm an addict. I'll be an addict till the day I die. The only question is whether or not I use today. Like the only question is whether or not I step foot back into that darkness. And let myself get to that point of despair again.
And for me to just have psychics pick up like the name Beelzebub, or to come up with that these characters are here. We had a group of 6. There's like the I Am Legion, I Am 6 crowd that was of demons that were sort of oppressing Laura. And so, just like when that stuff starts to pop up, like I've trust these psychics. We've worked with them a bunch. This is all pretty serious. Clearly the family's distressed. Things that are happening to this girl are not anything of explanation.
Yeah.
So to find like there's ancient biblical energy that's out there trying to create chaos in the world, and if it can find purchase and some vulnerability, it just pings around on all of us.
Yeah.
And if we're in a weak moment and it can just sort of be the demon on your shoulder, you get the angel and the devil.
It's creepy to think that there is something there that is poking and prodding and looking for that moment of consent, Ben.
Yeah, so
I've got goosebumps right now just thinking about it. Because
that's what the shows showed me, that is actually a reality. I was like, I didn't know.
Did that change you spiritually in any way? Have you followed a spiritual path in a different way since?
I definitely find God in nature, and I moved to Colorado, and I spend a lot of time in the mountains now. So I find that if I can get out among the forest, up in the high alpine, and that I can find peace. And it felt like going to work was a dark spot for a while, for sure. Work felt heavy.
I'll bet.
And we're like, this is not a normal day. And I do a lot of crime work, TV too.
Yeah.
Like I hear really horrible cases, and I just feel like that stuff is different than what was going on with these dark paranormal cases.
And like I'm pretty involved with the remote viewing community. I'm very good friends with Lim Buchanan from the Stargate remote viewing program, and he says it all the time, even in his classes. Like, you think you want to be somebody who finds missing children. You think that until they start renting your headspace. Until those things start encroaching on your life on the regular.
Yeah, because it's not like you turn off the camera and
the thought is gone.
No. I mean, one of the series I've been doing is In Pursuit with John Walsh, which is it's essentially the America's Most Wanted model, but it's on Discovery Channel.
Sure.
And so we work on unadjudicated cases that have an active fugitive.
Oh, wow.
And through his advocacy, his family's created the Center for Missing and Exploited Children, called National Center, NCMEC.
Yep.
And his son Callahan runs the Florida office. And I go out in the field with Callahan. We're not fugitive hunting. We're checking in on the case to get the audience to call in tips. That's always been their motto.
Absolutely.
But NCMEC has drawn the cases more into these child abuse cases. So we go to work every day and we hear somebody talk about how they were abused or their kids were abused, or and the abusers fled somewhere, and we're trying to find them. And it was like at church, or it was, as we know, people that want to hurt children often put themselves in a position of trust.
That's
with children. And so they'll be the
teaching police officers, firemen. It's horrifying.
Yeah. So all that in there too. So I mean, sort of my fault, right? I want to be a documentarian at heart, and I just like stuff that's kind of gritty and compelling. But it's a lot to carry around. Well,
it is a lot to carry around, and it really does become kind of a burden of knowledge at some point.
I have a friend who's doing a podcast now about should TV shows like that have sort of mental health.
A therapist on hand. Like, absolutely.
Hollywood.
That's no different than on a movie set.
They have an intimacy coordinator.
Yeah, like this scene made me feel some really deep things that I thought I lost connection with. I should really talk about them before the next scene. Yeah.
The other thing we would do is we would all gather as the crew, not necessarily always the investigators. They were their own team, but the TV production people would get together at the end of the night, and we would just all just decompress together and just give each other a little support and, tell each other that, okay, that was intense, but we're all right.
Well, and it's one of those things we talk about it with UAPPD out of Arizona. The idea of first responders, man, and what they have to go through and what they have to hold inside.
Absolutely.
The things, especially showing up to somewhere and even having a paranormal experience themselves as they show up on site, like, they can't just tell that to their commanding officer most of the time. Like, they will lose a badge. They'll lose a 20-year hard-earned career.
Right.
If they're like,
so
when I showed up, this weird thing happened, or I responded to a call about this weird thing, and there was really this weird thing.
Yeah.
So even the stigma of that and where it sits, like our show, one of the big missions that we have is human trafficking.
Oh, wow.
And buddy, that is one that over the last 8 years has gotten so thick and so real. It was one of those that even whenever I took it on, it was like, wow, this is like, the more you dig into this, like this is not down the road. Like, this is in everybody's backyard. From labor trafficking. Good Lord, one of the things we talk about whenever we have Radical Empathy Education Foundation talking about it is, are you an intern? Are you being labor trafficked right now while you're in college as an intern?
Wow.
You know, like, just they're working like 20, 30 hours a week with zero pay for experience. Like, be wary of that. Be wary of that, because most of that is labor trafficking.
Yeah.
You know, like, it gets disturbing when you start going down the rabbit hole of how closely these things are connected.
That's great you guys have latched onto that issue. And I certainly see through the In Pursuit show and through Nick Mick is that, social media has made it so easy for kids to be victims. And so, I mean, the trafficking of more human or sex trafficking is not as much labor, but is it's getting more prevalent. So I'm glad you guys are taking a stand.
Well, it's once again one of those things, until you start looking into it, until you start documenting it and talking to people about it, it's like you do not realize exactly how common this is. Much like paranormal experiences. Right. You really don't realize how common a paranormal experience is till you step into a family household and start interviewing people, and like 8 out of 10 people in the family, even outside of that location, have had a paranormal experience. Like, the way that these things run in bloodlines, stuff like that. It's fascinating.
I used to find, too, that it was often the loss of a loved one that would get people to sort of open up to that more. They would be grieving them. They'd be looking for a sign. They would sort of notice a butterfly on a windowsill and say, oh, that's my mom coming to visit me, or whatever it was. There was ways of people wanting to connect at those very intense moments of loss and grief. But the way when you come to the convention like these that are so fun is that everybody can let their freak flag fly, as in a way, we can just all not have to hide that we can talk about aliens and Bigfoot and
be okay with it. And be okay with it.
It's just like, this is our people.
And we may disagree on a couple points, but yeah, for sure. One of the conversations we were having earlier, and I want to kind of wrap this with this idea, is that idea of want of confirmation married with cognitive dissonance. How hard is that to fight on set? How hard is that to fight when you're there doing things? Because once again, you are not going to find something at every location you go to film. How do you approach the family who's been in this situation, who's had these experiences? Because you never want to discount somebody's experience.
So true.
Even on my show, it's like, scientifically, I want more things in red circles, because that's how we figure out the known quantitative. That's how you leave only anomaly. Let's find more of the known quantitative. But you have to be willing to accept what somebody found in that red circle, who's had like 20, 30 years behind the lens that, I could explain that pretty easily with light aberration, lens, all kinds of things. How do you...
I know, you want to... The audience... If, like in the Paranormal State sense, the family wants validation that what they've been experiencing is real. If it doesn't appear to the team while they're there, the psychics don't pick up on it, how do you gently let them down? I think often for us it was the circumstance that it didn't happen here for us at this point. It may be happening for you. We need to do more time. We don't have that time right now. So keep in touch with the team or develop your own technique of trying to capture evidence to show us that there's more evidence. And so that's one thing with like Ghost Lab, right? There often wasn't a client. They didn't, we would go to historic haunted locations and try to find residual energy, or it would be in an old insane asylum or an old prison and just see if there was anything that was sort of trapped there. So those guys were much more about the science of it. So it was easier in a way that you didn't have to have those meetings with the client to say, sorry, your house is really haunted or is not really haunted. For us, I think it's, TV wants a little beginning, middle, and end, and you want to leave feeling like you accomplished something there. So at the very least, we would create a ritual of either, smudging or putting
Sure.
oils on or burying something that we thought would give back to the space if it had been disturbed. So it's complicated. I don't know that there's a simple answer for how for a TV show to sort of resolve an investigation when you don't get a lot of evidence. But
well, even just the idea of psychologically, explaining to somebody and saying, hey, what we've found here does not remove your experience.
Yeah.
Nobody's trying to say your experience never happened.
Right.
Like even my experience that led me to the seminary, it's one of those, should anything ever be proven in my life that removes that moment, nothing will ever remove the way that moment made me feel and the way that moment catalyzed me and moved me down the path in my life.
And you're a good logic person, and you sort of appreciate that stuff. So there's a way where you sometimes can see how hysteria and emotion create some of these experiences.
Totally intertwined.
Yeah.
Totally intertwined. Absolutely. Because once again, faith is a very deep thing. I blame, even watching the cult show that I was telling you about before we started that my buddy filmed.
Yeah.
My wife's like, I do not get this. And I'm like, I do. Because there are things in my life that, like, you will never tell me that I did not bilocate. You will never tell me you did.
Amazing.
You may show me that I have, like, petit mal seizures.
Amazing.
Awesome. That may explain what happened that day in that church, but it doesn't change the way it made me feel, and it doesn't change my experience at that moment.
Wow.
Yep. So that faith is something that you carry with you, and even yourself, like you said, you are statically changed from the way that you were prior to filming these shows to
it opened
now,
my eyes
even
for
in your
sure.
own faith.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for the candid time today. It was
Thanks,
absolutely amazing, Benjamin. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Where can people go to follow your work? Where can they go to keep up with the latest series, everything else?
Yeah,
Right there at the camera. Let them
thanks.
know. Shameless self-promotion time.
It's the life of a freelancer. I bounce around. I'm currently on a home renovation show, so it's really not all ghost and crime.
That's right,
There's
that's
some
right.
time you just need to take some time off of the deep content.
Sometimes you just need a paycheck, man.
Yeah, but another way that I stay healthy and well is my wife and I started a mushroom supplement company. So
Beautiful.
we love that, that's not quite waving garlic at a Dracula, but, at a vampire, but it's a good way to have your immune system stay up and to have inflammation go down and your brain to stay alert. So West Wolf Medicinals is definitely a shameless plug for the mushroom products. And
Awesome.
I have a website, just my name, benjaminwolf.com, but I don't update it regularly, sorry to say. But you can find me. I'm around, definitely, and always open to hear about new projects.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for the time today. It was more than enjoyable. It was great sitting and eating dinner with you guys last night.
Yeah.
Fantastic conversation today.
Thanks so much.
Absolutely. While you are online checking out everything from Benjamin Wolf, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is where you can like, follow, subscribe. That is where you can find all of the episodes and our live coverage from events such as the Lonestar Paracon. It's also where you can find your copy of the Curious Research Field Observation and Encounter Log. If you are an investigator in the world of paranormal, cryptozoology, UFO, UAP, that is your in your pocket data log for everything you experience in the field, so that your data is ready to shake hands with science come the day it needs to do so. When we come back from this quick break, we will continue with our live coverage of the Lonestar Paracon right here in Schertz, Texas, right after this, folks.
Thanks.
The key to good science is good research. At the heart of good research is a good data set. With the field observation and encounter log from Curious Research, you can easily keep track of your investigative information all in one place, making it easier to review cases and readily see comparisons and contrasts between them. Whether out in the woods squatching, in a back room gathering EVPs, or using high-tech gear to track UFO, UAP activity, this easy-to-carry, pocket-sized scientific data log is the perfect companion for any field researcher. You can find your copy of the Curious Research Field Observation and Encounter Log at Amazon.com, or visit the official Curious Realm store at CuriousRealm.com/store to reserve your copy for yourself, your family, or a mind that you want to open. That website again is curiousrealm.com/store.